let's talk about a very fun and interesting type of poison, the curare. So curare is, I guess, more of a class of poison than a specific plant itself. It is used to describe a poison made from multiple different plants that the tribes of South America used to kind of poison the tips of their weapons. This plant is the velvet leaf, also known as the tube curare, which is one of the kind of 6 main plants that has been used to create the curare poison. It contains the toxic alkaloid tubocurarine, which is one of the main things that cause all of the poison symptoms. Now, like I said, there are about 6 or so plants that fall under the term curare, all of which have been used historically as a poison, largely for hunting but also for warfare. Curare was pretty much entirely used by indigenous tribes in the Amazon, like I said, to coat the tips of arrowheads and spears and darts, both for hunting large game as well as warfare against other tribes and European colonizers. It's quite effective as a hunting and warfare method because it causes total muscle paralysis when injected into the system by something like an arrow wound. And all of the curare types of poison are created by boiling the bark and or leaves of the various plants and then coating the arrows in whatever solution is obtained from that. It can be any number of these kind of curare type plants combined to make this poison, as well as a couple other toxic plants like the strychnine nux vomica that I've talked about before, which is a source of strychnine, another incredibly strong poison. Now, what's especially interesting about curare and all of those groups is that it is still technically a poison as far as I'm concerned. However, it is not very active when ingested orally, like pretty much every type of poison. It only really is effective as a paralyzing agent and poison when it is injected into the bloodstream, like many types of venoms are. It only actually works when it enters the bloodstream through either an open wound or a puncture wound. However, as far as I'm aware, it is not actually classified as a venom because it's not the plant itself that is doing the injecting. It is people injecting other things with a poison obtained by a plant. However, eating or otherwise ingesting this plant is not detrimental. As far as I'm aware, you will not get sick from actually eating this plant, which is why it works well as a hunting agent, because you can eat the meat that is obtained using this poison, and it's not contaminated in any way. Now, compounds from this specific plant, the tube curare, was actually used for a while as a kind of vintage anesthetic. However, it very, very quickly fell out of use because while it did paralyze patients and allow medical procedures to be done, it did not, in fact, anesthetize the patient, so they were still conscious and could feel all of the procedures. They just couldn't move or make it known that they could feel the procedures. So very, very quickly it was no longer used as an anesthetic, unless combined occasionally with other painkillers, which did stop patients from feeling the procedures. Again, unlike many poisons that do work on the muscles, it doesn't work by causing muscle contractions. It actually works as the opposite for causing muscle weakness. So instead of just contracting all at once and causing problems, none of them contract at all, which also causes problems, but in a different way. And in high enough doses, and if left untreated, it can cause death due to respiratory paralysis, largely due to the diaphragm, which is a very large and very essential muscle, not working anymore. And so the diaphragm doesn't move your lungs. I think cardiac muscles are left alone. I don't think this acts on cardiac muscles, so I don't think there's any heart issues, because as far as I've read, death does come due to respiratory paralysis instead of heart failure. But with supportive therapy, like intubation and keeping the lungs actually breathing until the paralysis wears off, it is not necessarily fatal. It's also been used to treat things such as tetanus, because tetanus does cause lockjaw due to the continuous contractions of the jaw muscles. So by providing this as a muscle relaxer, it helps ease the symptoms of tetanus, which is good. There's quite a lot more interesting information about the many different types of curare poisons and the many different plants that they come from, so this is kind of a slightly more broad overview about what the curare poison is and a little bit about the plant, where it's come from, and how it's used.